Welcome to the DES Pharma Podcast, where we decode regulatory shifts, review pharma news, and talk pharma technical operations. I'm your host, Matthew Pontrelli, and today I'm with Mead and Janine, and we're unpacking the FDA's January 14th, 2026 announcements on guiding principles of good AI practice in drug development. AI is a hot button issue, with applications spanning discovery all the way through commercial operations. These include general purpose chatbots, like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, to internally developed tools at large pharma companies, AI workflows and agents that have enormous range of applications, and I'll speak about that later, as well as specialized, sophisticated AI products combining mechanistic models with machine learning for PD, real-time analytics, and multi-site manufacturing insights. I do have to take here a quick disclaimer. This is not regulatory or legal advice. Always consult with your own advisors and engage FDI directly for your specific programs. So, jumping right in, we've got the FDA and EMA joint release statement on good AI practice in drug development. So, they released this, and I think I'd just like to read the first paragraph. And it goes, "Artificial intelligence has the potential to transform the way drugs are developed and evaluated, ultimately improving healthcare. In this context, AI refers to system-level technologies used to generate or analyze evidence across the drug product lifecycle, including non-clinical, clinical, post-marketing, and manufacturing phases. They also outline 10 principles that are intentionally high-level and are intentionally flexible, that establishes a principles-based, risk-proportionate framework to enable responsible AI innovation across the drug product lifecycle, while maintaining core regulatory requirements for quality, efficacy, and safety." So now that was my spiel about what good AI practice in drug development means, but we're now going to break that down. We all took a look at this and we all have our own thoughts, so we're actually going to start with Janine here.
But honestly, I would say overall, what I like about it, because I feel that everything is really both terms that we have seen already from several guidance, ICH guideline, EMA, and or FDA guidances. It's really the aspect of ethics and value around the AI. To me, those are the most critical aspect that people need to be careful. Yes, AI can do a lot of things, but we need to maintain our ethics and the values while using AI to do the work, because AI is not here to replace us as humans, to replace the scientists. AI is here to help us, to augment to enhance our ability, to get things done faster in a consistent manner and better quality with respect to regulatories. So that's what
Yeah, offline we had spoken about, what this meant. I think we both said that we were surprised about the speed at which this announcement came out. The FDA and EMA making a collaborative announcement isn't too usual, but it does highlight its critical importance, right? But because it came out fast, I think that it's intentionally broad. It's supposed to cover, as I said, from the first paragraph at how they define it, all system level technologies used to generate or analyze evidence across the drug product life cycle. That's an enormous scope. So right now they can't come in and say, oh, we need to validate this method of using AI, or this is, this way. The industry as a whole is trying to figure it out. So it's intentionally broad to just try to say, hey, we are expecting the use of AI to be done in a way, like you said, in a responsible manner. And I think that's the heart of it.
Exactly. Yeah. To me, right now, it is really like, a placeholder. They want to show that, hey, we know what's happening out there, so let's just put something out there. So they put that broad things out there, but, it has not gone into the details as an agency, to the level that it should go.
Yeah, I think the ethics point that they made is very important. I think it shows both the risk and benefit of AI, right? So, I think the data analysis function of AI is basically, integrating all of the different tools that we've had for years, like JUMP and different statistical analysis software. I think the danger is that if misused, right? There have been countless instances of people, forging, different parts of clinical data, forging release data, right? Data integrity with AI out in the wild, right, is going to become even harder than it was before, because you will not be. An AI generated fabricated data set may look exactly the same as a real data set, right? Given enough training. So I think there's the ethics part and the safety the safety mechanisms have to be beefed up. And I agree with you, Janine. This is basically a placeholder for something that's going to eventually get built out
Yes.
over time.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's in the spirit of the guidance is to, exactly like you said, implement those safety standards that their expectations are, that this isn't used as a tool to get past regulatory hurdles in an unethical way. So they're just laying down the law and just saying, this is what needs to be done. These are the principles that we expect you to follow. And they're just broad and flexible because it's a new technology. And with all new technologies, you don't know really what it can do. But I do want to bring us into the next section of our chat, which is, what we think AI is and what the real important topic here is what is actually happening in labs and on the manufacturing floor. So from what I've seen, despite all of the news, is a divide emerging between individuals who are really enthusiastic about AI. They're broadly adopting these chatbots, the general ones, Claude, Gemini, or ChatGPT, and those who are skeptical. It's hard for those folks to be like, let me adopt this new technology when there's not clear guidance. And I do think the guidance that they just released might help people go into the direction of use, because I think it is a really great productivity tool. They're not sure how to go about it, right? These chatbots have been available for a while, but now it's just sort of adoption. And there seems to be this big gradient in terms of understanding of AI. So I'd like to take an aside here to sort of describe what I believe are the main pillars of AI right now. So the first pillar is foundational models. So these are Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, any of these large language models that you can just go onto the internet, start interacting and start chatting with it, right now. And then really what's built on top of that are these AI wrappers or apps. The biggest and I think most popular one is Perplexity. Perplexity is actually not run off of its own model. It's run off of OpenAI. So it's this search engine that's got the use of AI, but it's built on something that's pre-existing. So it's really just a wrapper, right? So things in terms of the pharma industry that are really popular right now are Benchling AI, Viva Suite, AlphaFold, and they cover a big range of functions. Benchling AI is for laboratory notebook cleanup. Viva Suite is for clinical data management and clinical operations. AlphaFold is for discovery. That is a base model. That actually isn't a wrapper, but these apps and wrappers are they're all these products are coming out, and they're built off the models. But there's another pillar of sophisticated models that are being sold at the enterprise level, and these are hybrid models and complex generative models. So this is more based off of the fundamental background of AI, which is machine learning, right? Generative AI is just a portion of machine learning, and it's such a powerful tool, right? These models are essentially coming up with ideas of their own or complex thoughts provided by, big training data sets. But you can go back to machine learning as a large field, take, parallel parts to generative AI, for example, heavy statistical analysis that is built on training sets of data, combine that with generative AI, combine it with other statistical programs that already exist, and build sophisticated hybrid models that are sort of beyond our wildest imagination in terms of what they are saying that they can deliver. Now, I want to take that because Janine and I sat on a webinar recently that did have some of these hybrid models. They went from use of just ChatGPT to proprietary commercial models in terms of a company being used for AI stuff, all the way to these hybrid models that have this promise of being able to take data across multiple manufacturing sites, being able to take all that data and provide system level controls, which is quite the statement. So the webinar that we sat on was called From Hype to Harvest, Scaling AI in the Pharmaceutical Industry. And there were 5 industry experts: Sally Romero Torres from Hyperplane, Dan Hill from Fujifilm, Paul Gillum from SAI, Ashley Howard from Cytiva, and Dr. Boutte from Data How on hybrid modeling. And the through line for all these companies was that the industry is failing to execute on AI, being able to adopt it. And I want to ask you, Jeannie, what was your biggest takeaway from these 5 presentations?
Well, yeah, that was quite a webinar. It was 2 hours, past 2 hours, basically. Honestly, I would say there were all good topics that, each one of those speakers, brought in. But there was one particular speaker, Paul Gillum, really elaborate more on the use of AI, how to create platforms. So basically, I relate mostly to this topic, which was about, data flow and intelligent automation. So in his talk about, standardization of data, and he came up with that word FAIR, which really brought me, I made that kind of analogy with data integrity, where we have the alcohol, So I think it's a good thing. He says, findable, which is one of the things that you want in data integrity. You want to be able to, your data to be readily available, accessible, but now the thing that are specifically AI is really making them interoperable and then reusable, because this is the part that, we haven't done well, because we do countless of studies, and sometimes, we forget about them. Somebody leaves, a manager left, and then, people forget about this data. So basically, I think, his approach in the work that they are doing, his company is doing, to standardize data by going to using what they call static documents, to create, the data-centric solution to something that is more structured and machine readable. That can be used, shared, and then ultimately we know the end result is really you increase efficiency, you have better quality, you have consistency, and you have something that is better scientific foundation, right? So, and of course, allows automation, data collection, report generation, and reduces the cycle time, which is key. And again, this is not to snatch positions from scientists. It's
right.
using them in a better way, in a better manner. So with that perspective in mind, so I want to focus on the practical value of AI in analytical development lab, in QC lab, right? And be clear, again, the goal is not to use AI to replace scientists, but boosting the scientific values in making decisions by learning from and making good use of the huge data sets, that we mine over the time, and often forgotten. We forgot that, we have that study. What is it? Can somebody pull it out? So we need to, AI will help us, will keep us on our feet to know that, because everything will be reorganized and in real-time manner. Not retrospectively saying, we have done that study already, we don't have to repeat it again. With that in mind, let me start with asset development. I got here, I want to talk about, some of the aspects. This is not, this by itself could be a topic, for a podcast, but, I'm just going to point out, some of the key points, right? What are the wins by using AI, in an asset, you have the ability to learn from historical asset data, because, as you're developing a method, you keep on trying this, trying that, the use trial and error that, you guys, you do in your process that I did in analytical. So that used to be waste of time. So starting from early development to extending through routine testing in QC, when you start a process, start sending you sample, then you said, okay, I'm going to use that method. The method is not yet qualified, but I'm going to use it. And then you start data keep on varying. You got this number now, and next time you got a different number. But by recognizing the pattern across condition, instruments, analysis, and runs, AI can predict optimal asset parameters with far fewer experimental iterations. And this is really important. That's going to make us so much efficient, if we know how to integrate AI in this kind of work, right? So that means less trial and error, fewer failed conditions, faster convergence on robust methods. And guys, I'm pretty sure the same thing applied to you. I remember, back in the days when I used to work on small molecule, when you have to develop an assay and the time comes for you to check the robustness of the assay, infinite amount of experiment that you need to put together, and you could not change more than two parameters at the time, and you may have 10 to 20 parameters that you want to change. So you see how many experiments that brought in. But now with AI, this whole thing has changed, right? So less trial and error, fewer failed condition, faster convergence and robust method, especially important for complex biologics and gene therapy, where material is limited and timelines are usually tight, as you all know. Before that we even hit the lab, or you guys, you get something out, and then you're already at QC door saying that, do you have the results yet? I want to know before I go on, and to understand how to modify it, how to improve the process. It's crazy. But now with AI, I think there is going to be less stress on both ends, let's call it, R&D, the process R&D part, MSNT, if that exists in other company, and then manufacturing. So because AI is going to be the linkage to all of us and help us see things through, and then we can together sitting in a room and then decide, okay, these are predictively how many experiments that we're gonna come based on the run that the first two small scale batch that you have produced. Really excited. I'm no longer on the bench working in the lab, but I think that's going to be really, really interesting.
I think it raises the bar of the baseline PD or AD scientist up to a higher level, right? We're not reinventing the wheel a million times.
We are.
If it's implemented at the same level everywhere. And widely, people freely giving information, which I think is the information privacy part, I think has not really been addressed at all, or very, very rarely, especially with the open source, large language models. The stuff internal to companies is different, but I think like people dropping in their reports and stuff into these large learning models and just using them to do data processing, the data acquisition and licensure implications of that is actually pretty dangerous for companies, right? If you just look historically, people are worried about, it's walking off of their site. Right. What about people uploading them to these AIs? Right. It's the same thing. So I think that is to reach that point, right? Because what you're basically talking about is the experimental design cube, and it's a cube because it's to the third power, right? If I want to say these three things, it's to the third power. So it's kind of like if you're drawing a line in 3D space and it's guiding you in the right direction, you're going to get there faster, right? Exactly. Which is the same thing. But it can only do that if it's got the right information.
Absolutely. And it's no longer going to be siloed, AD is trying, their things, based on the result that they've seen and process, is trying their things. So now, this is going to be the linkage between all of us to say that, this is the direction that we need to know, because we have an agent that is using all this information and guide us. Guys, based on all that you have generated so far, this is the direction that you need to go. This is what I see, what the problem is. So that's really great, right?
It is, yeah. So very, very dense explanation in terms of that webinar. Really appreciate your take on it. Mead, I do want to revisit what you said in terms about AI documents walking off, as I think that's a pretty interesting. We'll move that into the next section. But in terms of what Janine was saying, so SAI, the Gillum presentation, had promised a lot of things, right? Which was, I think one of the most interesting ones was that they could take pretty raw electronic lab notebook data, unstructured, and be able to bring it all the way to self-driving lab. So, and I think that was, if I could take a big synopsis, what you were saying was about that. So when you have all this unstructured data, you're focused a lot on this interoperability, being able to go from process development, CMC, going over to analytical development, being able to go to quality control, for everyone to be able to achieve all their goals, particularly what you were saying in terms of quality control, being able to do all their experiments, to do qualification, to do robustness studies, to do validation, while PD, at the other hand, is trying to do their projects and their experiments, and ultimately coming at QC and being like, hey, we need our data, we need these updates, this is something we found, we changed the process. And, we need you to continue to do robustness studies, even though the process is already changed underneath your feet, making it very difficult. So AI does offer these interoperability opportunities, but I have to say that it's hard for me to believe it until I see it. So, I've only got my hands on, the available models right now, a bunch of the AI wrappers and products that are offered. But when we are talking about this webinar where they're describing these hybrid models, these sophisticated AI systems, until I get my hands on them, it's hard for me to believe that it's true. And I guess that was, one of my questions to you. We didn't get a demo. We just got explanation of what this high level piece of technology can do. And when they say about AI hasn't been adopted, how do you think that gap is going to get closed?
I don't know, honestly, but
I think that's fair. That's very fair.
What I can say that we at DES Pharma, so we need to make this a reality. We need to turn it into a reality in the way that we are going to design system, in the way that we are going to interact with clients, the guidance that we are going to provide them, to make the best decision, and then, so they can take their product, from phase 1 to phase N, wherever they want to go. So that should be our goal, right?
Agreed. And I think that brings us into our final section, which is AI integration. How does it mirror and reflect the problems that we already see in PD, CMC, analytical development, and QC? The implementation of it is going to be a reflection of the existing problems. So what's your take on that, Mead? I'll offer to you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the industry not as long as, Gene, but, just think about even integration of, electronic batch records into GMP, right? Or electronic lab notebooks, or, distributed control systems, right? These technologies have been around for years, right? Years and years and years. I think deep distributed control systems have been around since, like, I want to say, right? Why aren't they adopted? Primarily cost, time, validation, hardships, right? I can't tell you how many times, I've worked on a program, right, that's at a CDMO or a manufacturing site, that could have benefited or averted significant losses, through automation, but they never adopted the automation, right? And I think that for me is where it comes down to, right? AI is excellent at data analysis, right? It's a 24/7 watchdog that you can sick on a problem and let it sit there, and it will never ever go, get tired, make a mistake, right? That kind of thing, right? As long as it's trained correctly. But the problem has always been, how do you feed it data, right? The data has to be clean. It has to be in the format that it expects, right? It has to be accurate, right? We just talked about that, right? So, which means that the baseline is no longer really, people writing lab notebooks or, paper batch records. It has to be completely electronic, right? Once you have that baseline, and you're able to consistently and accurately extract the information, then it's a AI training problem, right? You can apply that data extraction to live processes, live PD experiments, live assays. Again, I think all of this, the infrastructure is not there. Well, it has not been implemented near anywhere that I know of, right? Once you have that data, though, I think the training aspect is relatively easy. And I think it's easier, right? Once it knows, and these processes have been, around forever, right? For the majority of the biologics and most, I don't know about the small molecule as much, but, the training of the AI on what to expect, I think is relatively easy, right? And then the output, I think, is not as big of a hurdle. But the biggest bottleneck that I see is the data acquisition, right? And that is true, that is true of both the large language models and, what you described with the different packaging. So, like you, I am skeptical whether all of these promises are actually going to be fulfilled. But one of the major goals, I think, internally, for DES is to build a platform that, and remove AI from the equation, right? Simple things like, aggregating what is the best experiments to do for a given modality, right? A given assay, right? Clearly designed forms that are easy to fill out, that can be filled out electronically, right? Potential, right? Excel data sheets that are formatted correctly to go and do statistics on, because I can't tell you, and Janine, I'm sure you feel the same way, right? The Excel data sheets that I get from clients and from CDMOs, and you would not believe it, right, are formatted atrociously, right? No AI is going to fix those, right? Are very difficult to fix, right? Because it doesn't know what just like statistics is the same, whether an AI is doing it or a person's doing it, right? So if your data is formatted poorly, the data isn't, categorized correctly, labeled correctly, entered incorrectly, AI doesn't fix any of those things, right? Just makes it worse, if anything, right? So to me, that's where the brass tacks: simplicity, individual building blocks that build up to a more complex system. And from an engineering perspective, right? If you are able to fully parameterize, your problem or your experiment, you can always get to the answer. It's not a problem of whether or not we can get to the answer. It's how many experiments do we have to do, and do we understand all the parameters correctly? So that's my take.
I couldn't agree more. The main bulleted information that I felt that came from you was we need some way to get unstructured data structured, and I think it's very reasonable to be skeptical of the promises that folks are making out there about, we can take any data, we can take, PDF, printouts of your lab notebook, which can be very, very sloppy, and at the very least unstructured, and turn it into a full lab, right, where you're going to get the most optimized experiments from this lab note. And it wouldn't be hard to believe that AI is, as it is, it's not perfect, it hallucinates, to start making stuff up, and then, right, even the guiding principles had not even a touch about validation in there. It didn't say, we're going to imply this complex AI model that we know that hallucinates a lot, can make up data, can make up whatever answer because they're tended to want to please us, at least at the foundational levels, and then be able to promise a exact solution. It's good reason to be skeptical, and to answer back to these webinar folks. Yeah, there's a reason why this hasn't gotten adopted. There's the whole validation side, which you haven't clearly answered. And I think that's what Janine was talking about in terms of her part, which is, yeah, it's going to make things a lot faster, be able to be interoperable between departments, but, the promise is going to be delivered.
So that paper, the 10 guiding principles that they published this month, should have just been an intent to write a guidance, a real guidance. Maybe they should have published it as a white paper. Even then, I don't see that, it's deep enough, but that's not the guidance. We all know that, so we agree on that. And I want to touch very quickly on something that Mead talked about, Excel spreadsheet, that not only you can lose the data. I mean, you can protect them to make sure that people cannot overwrite things, but it could happen that if everybody has access to enter data, which you don't even know whether or not they are entering the correct data, that they generated. So it's a real mess. So having an AI system capable to directly connect, interface with your system, the software of the instrument that is generating the data, to extract the key information and then organize them in a proper manner. Then your trending can be done automatically, and that trending can take into consideration all the parameters that you want to be taken into consideration, different instrument, different analysis, and so on and so forth. It's really unlimited, advantage that we can get, out of it.
But that's like basically saying redesign every analytical instrument and piece of process equipment to interface with there has never been a standardized data collection system, right? That let me tell you is one of the biggest problems, right? You have different equipment manufacturers running different software, right? They have to all talk to all talk to basically a data logger, common data logger to do that, right? And that has never materialized in 30 years, right? Or you have better versions of that in the telecom industry than you do in pharma. And for a $4 million, $5 million batch, you know, it's I don't know why, I really don't, but it's the truth, right? Like it doesn't make any sense, but it takes a unified industry approach to get to that point, and there's no indication that they're doing that, right? Like the infrastructure part, I mean.
Well, to be fair, Janine did bring it up when she talked about standardization, which was the acronym FAIR: findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, which was the standardization that we saw in terms of the webinar, where we have to have stuff that's AI ready. We have to have that data that's AI ready. Point out a challenge that's it feels insurmountable, and you need to be shown proof before you believe it. And that's that. I think that's what I would challenge AI in 2026 to really do is, you got to remove the paywalls and you got to prove it. If you want a wide adoption, you got to prove it.
Matt, I could not agree more with that, with you about that, because to me, at that point, it will be very difficult to get, all the different instruments that we guys know, whether it is process or analytical, to go back and then revise their upgrade their software, to be AI ready. So AI has to be ready, to go and then, be able to connect, interface, and then, get those information and then, analyze them as that should be. So maybe it's AI, the responsibility of, how those AI systems are going to be developed.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you to you both for the podcast and for the takes. And I thought this was a riveting conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.
Very fun.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.